We got the behind the scenes on some Dungeon Coach, Dungeon Mastery that we're going to bring into this channel. I used to do this on my second channel, but that channel I am now combining with this one. Everything's going to be all in one spot for you guys about anything having to do with tabletop roleplay games, D&D or DC20 that just launched as well. But anyway, this series is about me running my home Curse of Strahd game. There are going to be spoilers for Curse of Strahd here, so be careful with that. But I'm going to talk about how I run it and just in general Dungeon Master tips that I do along the way of some behind the scenes last minute calls I have to make live on the fly and different things that we can maybe all learn from. Things I do great at, things I suck at and learn from, and hopefully you guys can learn from with me. So I've not seen normal videos like this. I've done 24 of these now that are on the other channel. I'll link that down in the description. That will just stay like that. All the future ones will be here on this channel though. And all I do is just basically give what I thought was going to happen and then what ended up actually happening. And I just haven't really seen many people do videos like this, so I thought it's a fun thing to do. And also, if you're interested in seeing the live gameplay footage of these videos that I actually play at the table right here in the new studio room and everything every single week, the live plays of my Curse of Strahd campaign are available to my patrons at the entry level. All patrons get access to my weekly home games that will eventually turn into weekly home games of DC20 and other things that are involved there too, as another one of the many reward perks over there. So without further ado, let's get into the breakdown. This is session 24 of Curse of Strahd. For a little mini update, my players are level 6. They have traveled all the way from the village of Barovia through into Vallaki. They met Strahd's secret identity and everything. They went and did a dinner with Strahd. They had dinner with Strahd that turned into a whole battle with Strahd where one of the players had to leave. In real life, one of the players had to leave, and I planned on killing them with Strahd, but they pulled it out and they beat Strahd's test. That's a whole nother conversation that I already did a video on around session 20 or 21 or so. But anyway, they are now moving far west to the village of Kresk, and they arrived there at the end of the session. We took a big break after all the stuff I had going on, and this was one of our sessions back. As they approached Kresk, they had some quests that I sent them on. There's 3 different quests, and they went to the one where, they go to the winery. They went to the winery, and arriving to the winery, realized that their fated ally. One of the things in Curse of Strahd is you have 3 relics you have to go find and 1 fated ally you need to find. Their fated ally is, you guessed it, at this place that they went to, the Wizards of the Wines winery, this big winery place in the middle of the forest, right? So they find this place and they're going to go there, and what happens? They find out that he's actually been kidnapped and captured, which is a props to Lunch Break Heroes for coming up with that idea, a little tweak to the rules. Normally you'd find him in the forest, you'd find him in there with his family and they'd be like, help. But I wanted to put their fated ally in danger and then earn it. And so then he's now inside the house, and they had to go get him out of there, break him out. So we ended the session on them entering into the Wizard of the Wines winery, and they found this one specific very important druid that had a very important staff, the staff of Galthias, or Galthias, how do you say that? I don't know. And this staff, if broken, kills all blights within 300 feet, right? So there are like 100 blights encroaching in on this house, and that's where we left the session off. And them squaring off, first round of combat stopped right in the middle of it, and that's where we ended the session on some tension, right? So we pick up there. What I thought was going to happen in this whole situation was we're gonna have some fight. I didn't know if they're gonna break the staff or not, but they're gonna find the Davian, get out of there in whatever way they did, and then probably go back to Kresk. That was my big picture Dungeon Master thing. And turns out I was correct in that regard, so we're good there. And then from here on, I'm going to kick it over to my Notion document. This is also another reward perk on Patreon. This is my Curse of Strahd Notion, available for patrons. It's one of the higher reward tiers, because I'm still in the middle of working on it, and eventually once this thing finishes, it will be available on my website. But it is a full-blown, every single thing resource. If you've not seen this yet before, this is the campaign overview. It has every single piece of Curse of Strahd, all hyperlinked and everything, with different things at checkpoint as you run it off live during your games. It's all fully fleshed out. So they're all all the way over here. They're going to the Wizards of Wines, and there they are in the Wizards of Wines. We're in there. They approached the vineyard. They met the Martikov family. They had the two quest and follow-up quests to be able to take. They approached the winery, and now they enter the winery. Each of these little openings is the loading docks. They enter into the loading docks. Here's what's there. Then they go to the outside and they each have these little drop downs and stuff. So we'll stay here right now for the rest of this. But they had the fight inside the house. So they went into this house, and I can quickly find it right here. And there's the Galthias staff druid, and this is where they were at. They were fighting in the druid. The druid has this whole stat block here. The Galthias staff has these special features here. And I'm not going to ever do like a full turn-by-turn combat breakdown, but basically they have a square off with this one druid, and the layer action is the entire I described dozens upon dozens of these blights just encroaching in on the house. And I had a big red dice with a 3 on it. And then on the layer action, I turned it to a 2 and then a 1, and then they would be at the house. So I warned them of it. And so it was like ominously like they're coming, right? And also they were getting, the other parts of the house were getting kind of infiltrated and people running in with, so I can actually show the map here, right? So on the map, wherever I know where all the enemies are, and as soon as this loud noise is happening, they all start to run through the house and go to where they're at. So here's the house right here, and the players entered in from here, and then all these blights in this druid were kind of starting to rush out this way, and they're in the upstairs. They jumped into this lower staircase here. The paladin jumped upstairs, and the rogue jumped upstairs. The rogue starts running through here looking for people. He actually runs right here. And Davian, I had put right there in this room. He's literally right there, but the rogue backpedaled and kind of went down this way. They got to be in the cellar. You were so close. We'll talk about that here in a second. But the druid and paladin were fighting the rogue and paladin were fighting the druid up here as all the rest of the bad guys are kind of flooding in this way. So it was a really interesting dynamic fight of like these two different things going on. But as they kind of fought off this horde of these massive amount of blights rushing out, I used swarm rules and stuff like that to get that across. The paladin and druid went off, and the rogue got his killing blow, killed the druid up top, and the staff hits the ground and rolls towards the paladin. I described it very ominously doing that. So I'm in a spot as a dungeon master, right? And we'll go back to big picture here. This is another little dungeon master tip thing here. I want this player to break the staff. I think that'd be sick. I think that's a sick move for the player to be able to break the staff and then have this thing happen, this hero moment of like, oh my God, I just did this huge epic thing. I killed 100 blights in one moment, snap, right? So I really tried to play it up and make sure the staff was important. But as Dungeon Masters, we can't be too heavy-handed with that. We can't be like, oh, hey, do you want to take up the staff? So I sat back, and the staff had some sort of like madness component to it that the paladin had suffered a madness effect of, and I just said, you still are under the effects of this madness situation, and your eyes are fixated on this staff. So the magic is still there. It was not connected to the druid, it was connected to the staff, and that's all I said, because that was true, and that was a mechanic to represent the importance of why this magic item was so important, right? And then it was really interesting to see them kind of like fixate on it, and the player role played it up pretty well. And then the bard was like, can I try and, hey, actually, this was interesting. The bard said, can I counter charm to try and shake her out of it? And I was like, technically, this isn't really a charm, but it kind of is a charm. It's more so like a emotional possession type of it. They're not possessed. It's just a mind emotion mess, right? And I was like, you know what? I totally will say, all right, how about this? Give me a spell check, which is kind of a more so of like a DC 20 type thing. So a lot of my inspiration comes from DC 20 because I just released that game system, and it just has a lot more, I think, smoother, cleaner ways of issuing things out like this. So I was like, you know what? All right, we'll go ahead and say your counter charm ability and the other abilities that Lars has had and established this whole campaign to be able to reach into people's minds and mess with emotions and minds and thoughts and stuff. You can totally do this. So his action was to take his turn to make a spell check and try and beat the DC, and if he beat it, the paladin would be released from this. Did it, broke it, freed him. Awesome, great, cool, right? And so now the paladin's like, and the paladin, the player at the table said, like they were talking about what they were about to do in their turns. You know how players talk in between turns and stuff. Like, what if I just pick it up and break it? that thing's creepy. What if I just break it? Oh, but then I might touch it. And I was like, you totally could. I was like, and then I hear the player wants to touch it, and I'm like, oh my God, yeah. So it's like, you could easily break it. Now, I would just rule that as like an object interaction, and you can just break it. You know, it's not going to take your action or anything like that. So there's me trying to show, hey, if you do this thing, it's not going to cost that much at all. Come on, it's fine. You can totally do it, right? That's what I'm trying to do, but not heavy-handedly, right? And then I also wanted to say, but yeah, you don't know. You don't really know as far as like if you touch it, like what would happen if you touched it? Like would something be cursed or whatever? You don't really know. So I made sure to hit both sides and make sure that it truly would have been a risk for them to do. And then if it benefits from it, it's going to feel much, much better. So yeah, I tried to play it as neutral as I could, and it went off pretty well, because on the paladin's turn, they picked it up and they started talking about like the cleric just cast a fire spell, and they're like, is there any smoldering fires on the ground? And I was like, what do you mean? Because I don't know if they want there to be smoldering fires or not want there to be smoldering fires, right? I'm trying to feel that out, because I want to say yes to whatever the thing that would get them to throw the staff into, like to break the staff, right? And they're like, well, I'm just looking to see if I could throw the staff into some of those fires. And I was like, okay, throw the staff into the fire. You could totally try that. I was like, yeah, you see some smoldering fires on the ground. There's just little bits. It's nothing like the house is burning down, but like you see some smoldering fires. And then she's like, okay, I'm gonna break the staff and then throw. I was like, oh. So little did they know, as soon as they broke the staff, it's done, right? So they broke the staff, and then this high-pitched screech yells out across this echo, almost like a sound nuke goes off. And as it echoes out, just like a Thanos snap, all the tree blights like get faded away, right? Super epic moment. The panel's like, oh my gosh, like that's super crazy. So that went off super well. And now all the rest of the druids are trying to leave and escape. So back to the map. This thing right here, I had the prisoner was up here, their fated ally was up here. So then in my head, I'm like, all right, 2 rounds have gone by. They're going to try and beeline it down the stairs here, which pops them out here, and then get out. And so then I was like, all right, here we go. And the rogue, meanwhile, was running. The rogue ran down this way, ran down the steps, all the way down here, ran across here, one-shot a druid with some crazy natural 20 crit rogue sneak attack, plus this, that, and the other bonus. Woo! And then zippity-zapped through here, and they ended their turn right here. So they were going to perfectly come out right as the bad guy was trying to leave downstairs with their fated ally. The rogue was running upstairs. So it worked out perfectly. And then they were able to catch him, finish him off, got a final blow, and then done, right? And I had one of the druids escape. The druid that was kind of messing with the winery vats, they ran out the back door and escaped, right? They weren't able to kind of catch him. And I left it to a big final roll at the end to see if they're still within sight, but they're gone, right? The druid left. And that's going to come back to get him later. So it went pretty well. It was pretty epic, and they had a pretty big success from it. And then going back to I guess that is the thing. Now they found Davian, and they also had this little brown mold trap situation. Down in the cellar, there's some brown mold, and the players are playing with the brown mold. If you're not familiar with brown mold, it loves fire and it sucks in heat. So they were just kind of casually like, oh, look at this brown mold. And then somebody had a torch. And Irina, who is a very, very important ally, who I have having 20 hit points. Irina has 20 hit points. So it was enough hit points to where this massive damage, I set this brown mold to deal a lot of damage. And if they got the fire around Irina, and Irina was the one holding the torch. She just holds the torch out, and they hold the brown mold out, and the brown mold like it goes and sucks in the fire, and it hurts Irina. And then I wanted to see the damage of like how much that would, and she was fine. It ended up being okay, but that was a nice little scare there. But it's almost like I like traps like that to let them play with things and know that, oh, there's some dangerous things here, or like let them be able to explore with things. Sometimes it's a treasure they find, and sometimes it's just a trap, or they want to keep a little piece of this brown mold and see if they want to use it. It's like a little magic item now they have, a little piece of it in a vial. So now they needed to head back to town. But I messed up. They needed to head back to town, and if you're not familiar with the map of oh, hey, here we go. If you're not familiar with the map of Curse of Strahd, I got it wrong in my head. So this is the map, right? And this is where Kresk is. They had traveled down here to go to the Wizards of the Wines, right? So they're here. And I said on the road leading to Vallaki, there's a white dragon and it stops carriages. Any sort of wagon or carriage, there's a white dragon. No. I added in a white dragon named Glaceon the White. It's a new dragon that's entered into the. I thought it'd be super cool if a dragon stumbled into the lands of Barovia, and that's also why it's a lot more cold in this area because the aura of the dragon. Anyway, it's been a really cool addition to Curse of Strahd. And I was like, yeah, it's on the trade route towards Vallaki is where the dragon is. And the other road that leads away, which is what I thought led to the Wizard of the Wines winery, he's not on that road. That's fine. Because I knew they were going to get a shipment of wine from the winery and need to take it back to Kresk. And I didn't want the dragon to be in the way of that. I want the story to keep moving. And I didn't want that problem to be in the way. So then they were like, oh, so like, look, they realized that they needed to go back. Like, oh, but what about that dragon? Can we see the map? And I just found the map because we just moved and unpacking everything. And I looked at the map and I was like, okay, oh no. The road that leads to Vallaki is the same road that they're going to need to be taking, right? So because they're here and they were going to need to go this way and then go down that road that the dragon's on. So I was like, dang it. Oh no. I didn't want them to have to fight a dragon. That's obviously too much. And I just didn't want them to get back to Kresk. So I messed up. So what I did was try to make this is as simple as possible for them. Try and make this try and help find outs and stuff. But I don't want to hand wave it because it's a freaking dragon and I want it to be scary. So I am in a situation where I'm like, oh crap, I need to find a way out of this. And as I'm thinking that, one of the players said, hey, and they're like looking through their inventory, like how can we kind of get this? How can we get this over here? And they're brainstorming, and they were doing a great job. They're doing a great job brainstorming of like what can we do to try and get this wagon across and this and this and that. And I'm just like, okay, man, they have a good head on their shoulders with this. And then one of the players like, oh, I found this wand of silence. What does it do? And when I give my players magic items, I just generally describe in general what they find out that it does. It's like a puzzle they have to solve. So they don't know exactly what it does, right? Unless they have some sort of, they use it specifically or they have a high level identify. I also don't use the identify spell rules as written. There's levels to it. You make spell checks to determine, and certain items are so powerful you won't know exactly what they're capable of unless you use it, right? Or if a player finally uses an item correctly, then I'll be like, hey, yeah, this is how the magic item works, right? After playing with it, because I think it's just a more fun way of discovering magic items. But anyway, I'm so glad that I did that because the Wand of Silence was a single target silence on one person. And even as I started to describe it at the table, I was like, yeah, it's a single target silence on one person. And then as soon as I said that at the table, I instantly was like, they could use it on the wagon. They could use it on the wagon to sneak by the dragon. I was like, or it can be, it's like a zone. So you can target a person with it, or you can target an object and it has like a zone effect on it. And they're like, oh, now normally as a dungeon master, I would not have been so forthcoming with like what this wand does. But in the situation where I realized I messed up by putting the dragon in a spot where I didn't think the dragon would be, I was a lot more giving of information, and I even added a new mechanic to this silence wand thing to give them a silence wand so that they could cast silence on a wagon that wouldn't be heard as they're going through. I was like, oh, okay, awesome. And now they're like, well, how long does it last? I was like, shoot, I can't give them a wand that lasts for hours because then that's just broken, powerful wand. So I was like, I gotta tie it to a spell check. I was like, yeah, you're gonna have to make a spell check, and depending on the spell check is how long it lasts. And okay, now there's tension. This is going great now. So now the game plan was they're gonna go down the path. There's a section where the dragon kind of like roams, right? And whenever they get to that section, they camouflage the wagon with like a whole bunch of white cloths so they kind of hide it in the snow. They're gonna go underneath they describe going underneath, not on the main road, but like off to the side, kind of going through so that the dragon couldn't see them from above. So they had all these things laid out. So each player had the different things they were doing, and they all set it up. And then, so I have 4 players. 3 of them described things that they were doing to help the wagon, and the other one had the wand of the silence wand, right? So how the stage was set for this skill challenge was there was a DC. I was going to make a roll for the dragon, and then if I was going to have it be a fate roll. A fate roll is a mechanic I use in DC 20. It's just a flat D20, almost like a death save, where 10 and above is good, 9 and below is bad, right? And then each of the 3 players made a check, and the other ones that were helping for the wagon thing, one of them failed, the other 2 just barely succeeded, and so those 2 successes brought that 9 on the fate roll. 10 and higher is good, 9 and lower is bad. It brought the 9 down to a 7. Okay, cool. So now 7 and lower is bad, 8 and higher is good. Okay, cool. And I was going to roll the d20. And if on a high, cool, they escape the dragon. On a low on the dice roll, the dragon was going to swoop down. That's going to be a big problem, right? So tension at the table for sure. Now I was like, man, I don't even want them to fight this dragon right now. I just want to get them to crest. Oh my gosh. So if they failed, if that d20 hit on the low end, it was going to come down to one more check from the silence wand. And if you hit a DC, whatever, I don't even know what that number would have been. I probably in my head, I'm thinking like a 15 or maybe a 20 for a spell check then to be able to have it happen, to be able to save the day and then silence and then they get through, right? And that's another general tip, Dungeon Master, is if you are in the middle of trying, you want something to happen, give them multiple rolls where if any of them succeed, it'll happen. And then the same is true in the opposite direction. If you really want something to be hard to happen, have there be multiple checks that they have to succeed on consecutively with no failures. And if one failure happens, they don't get it, right? So, and that's kind of in your control as a Dungeon Master of how many checks you ask for. So I had a 2-layered check here where see if the dragon comes and see if you can save the dragon. Here we go. Made the roll at the table, fate roll. Rolled a 13, I think. Okay, they made it through. Oh, nice. They arrived to Kresk. Done, right? And then the final little moment here, they arrived to Kresk, they get in, they welcome him in and everything like that, and they wanted to have kind of like this, yay, it was cool and fun. And the end of the session was getting close. And they're in Kresk, and one of the other homebrew tweaks that I've made to Kresk is in Kresk, there is a pool. It's supposed to be a shiny, shimmering, glimmering pool of this hopeful, positive magic. No, it is a cursed blood pool in my world. The cursed blood pool is the exact site and location where Strahd's father died. This is homebrew on my part. In Kresk, the location where Kresk was built upon, that the body of water there was part of a larger body of water, etc. And during the war that Strahd fought alongside his father against the opposing armies, Strahd's father was stabbed, killed during the war, fell down and into that pool of water, and that's part of what started leading Strahd down the dark path towards his eventual becoming a vampire and Dreadlord, etc. So that is a cursed pool. Cursed from Strahd, curse of Strahd, one of the start of the curses of Strahd, actually. So this blood pool is the spot where his father died, and it's this very, very cursed spot. It's also the spot where him and Sergei has a connection there, and the sun sword, the hilt of the sun sword, the legendary item, it has the spirit of Sergei trapped inside of it, and it wants to be returned because the home of this spirit is at this pool where they both lost their father. That's the last moment that that Strahd and Sergei shared together as brothers in this emotional moment together. The last moment they shared together, and that's where Sergei's spirit's home is. His spirit's trapped inside this blade, but he wants to return to the spirit. And if they return Sergei to the pool, it cleanses the curse, and that curse is lifted. So that's one of the little interesting things there. But now they're in the city of Kresk, and they have the sword. And I was like, how can I they didn't go to the pool. I was like, how can I give some sort of foreshadowing here? So I came up with this on the fly, and I did this really spooky death scene. I said I need the person who has the sword, the cleric of the group. I asked them to make a charisma save. Right? And then they're like, okay, so they made a charisma save, and then they're filled with emotions, and they feel with this past, and they have this vision. And I said, whoever your character's most important loved one is, you watch them die and fall into a pool of like a lake, like they fall at the base of a lake, and their blood starts filling the lake, and the whole lake turns into blood. And they're like, oh my gosh. And I was like, it's violent. You hear screams, you hear battles, you hear swords clashing, and then you rush to awake. And there's this they're like, whoa, what? And then I also had Irina, who's part of the group. Irina had a different reaction. Irina had this very emotional response and was blank. And while those two characters had that happen, they were both completely deadpan blank. And then they snapped out of it. And Finian was like, wait, what just happened? And Irina was ran over to Finian and gave Finian, the cleric, a hug. Are you okay? And there's that connection to Sergei, and there's Irina, and who is Tatiana. We all know that maybe at this point. Irina, whose previous lover is Sergei, and this love that's connected them through time and space, whatever. And she had this emotional response to come over and hug Finian, are you okay? And they're like, wait, what just happened? So little foreshadowing clue of Irina and this weird emotional response she had towards Finian, who had a thought of someone, loved one dying, and wait, what? So I foreshadowed that in a really interesting way, and that's right into the session. So now they're going to next session pick up in Kresk, and we'll see what happens in Kresk. There's lots of stuff to do, but I cannot wait for them to get to that pool and me read the dialogue that I have prepared for what happens at that pool, because it's a big reveal. It's a Sergei. Oh man, it's gonna be crazy. Lots of lore, lots of really interesting stuff that's been building up, and a love scene potentially. Love scene, what I mean by that is one of the PCs have been actively in a relationship with Irina, and actually it came up this session that Irina loves Lars. Lars is the bard. Irina, like they have this connection that's been spanning across the entire campaign so far, and it's really checked out, really made sense, really been really cool. And Irina's about to reunite with Sergei, and how's that going to work? Oh my gosh. And I can't wait for that to happen, because that's been a huge character arc. But anyway, we'll get into that next time, and that's a little bit of a story, a little bit of Dungeon Master nuggets along the way. If you're new to this, welcome, and thanks for hanging out, and maybe hopefully you learned something, and hopefully maybe you even add something to your Curse of Strahd campaign. And if you're interested in seeing it be played and seeing the Dungeon Master guide, binder, and all that kind of stuff, check out Patreon. As usual, I have a bunch of resources over there. I post stuff on there about Curse of Strahd every single week. So until next time, stay creative. Think outside the box. Peace.